Beijing has improved its international image over the recent past despite records of repression, human rights abuses, especially the detainment of Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps, and of course COVID-19 that led to the most recent global pandemic. The initial elements of soft power mentioned before do include aid, formal diplomacy, trade, and investment. The Chinese government and all its allies rely on greater elements of soft power compared to what was conceptualized by Nye. In the context of China, soft power is anything outside the military and security, but also include coercive economic power and diplomatic levers of aid, trade, investment, and involvement in multilateral international organizations. China's choice of soft power elements is largely associated with its global isolation after the Cold War, when it had a completely different set of concerns. The original conceptualization of soft power, which was based on America as a country, largely focused on democratic states, which explains why authoritarian China widened its scope of what it defines as soft power and the subsequent constituent elements. Beijing is a major player in Southeast Asia and Asia as a region, which has informed the constant revision of over-reliance on hard power currencies, especially the military. Beijing's behavior in international politics has largely been described as the peaceful rise and later peaceful development. The whole idea behind peace as the anchor of Chinese foreign relations has been the hope that it would enhance the growth of the country's economy, foster cohesion, generate opportunities for its companies abroad, enhance its science and technology capabilities, and obtain resources perceived to be necessary for the growth of the economy of China. China's authoritarian regime has largely been overshadowed by its success in the political economy that has seen the tripling of the gross domestic product over the last 3 decades. Former President Hu Jintao was of the opinion that historically, countries that use threats and force in the pursuit of their interests never really go so far. President Xi Jinping once stated that we should increase China's soft power, give a good Chinese narrative, and better communicate China's messages to the world. The Chinese Dream, the Silk Road Economic Belt, the 21st Century Maritime Silk Road, the Asia-Pacific Dream, and the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, all launched by President Tsai, are examples of Chinese investment in the pursuit of soft power all over the world. Xinhua News Agency has been very instrumental in building the image that the Chinese Communist Party has in the global stage today, with the profit motive underlying the functioning of the news agency, placing it at competition with other global players that focus on worldwide agencies such as Bloomberg, Reuters, and Associated Press. Confucianism, which is the basis of Chinese culture, is really influential across Asia. Confucian values are quite traditional, but the recent growth of China's place in international politics has seen these values take center stage across Asia, especially the East. Some of the values are completely anti-American, such as the primacy of the group as opposed to the individual and the basis of communism. Additional Confucian values include promotion of harmony and order, diligence, prudence, the preeminence of the family and the social structure, and the significance of virtues and ethics. Confucian values are deeply ingrained into the Chinese identity, as their democracy is largely harmonious, policies are people-oriented, and rewards and punishments are socialized. The first Confucius Institute was established in South Korea in 2004, with this number standing at over 500 globally by 2018. The institutes showcase Chinese culture in host countries, with the end goal being promoting a positive Chinese image. The Chinese government has leveraged the recent global interest in China to spread their culture, especially through Chinese festivals in North America, Europe, Australia, and Africa. Part of promoting the Chinese culture has been teaching the language through Chinese Hanyu Shuping Kaoshi, HSK, an equivalent of teaching of English as a foreign language, TOEFL, that has registered an increase in the number of foreign students interested in learning Chinese, with most of them being from South Korea and Japan. Globally, China ranks third in the number of international students enrolled in their universities, behind America and the United Kingdom. The growth in the number of foreign students in China has largely been attributed to their economy and culture. Particularly, the cultural aspect of Chinese attraction is evidenced by increased enrollment into courses that include learning about Chinese culture, such as Chinese language, arts, history, philosophy, and traditional Chinese medicine. Non-language courses that report the greatest enrollment numbers in Chinese universities include medicine, engineering, management, and economics, even though other disciplines such as agriculture and education are enjoying tremendous success in terms of increased popularity. Between the mid-90s and early 2000s, 30 former Chinese foreign students were ministers in their countries, 10 were ambassadors to China, and over 120 were senior university staff in their countries, which shows that drawing foreign students makes them sympathetic towards the cause of the state. Chinese domestic values are also a great source of soft power. The economic reforms of the 70s led to the adoption of economic liberalism and the resultant impressive economic growth that have shaped the country's global perceptions and emulation over the recent past. The Beijing Consensus, a complete opposite of the Washington Consensus, develops policies tailored to meet the demands of specific economies throughout the world. The Beijing Consensus on authoritarian governance and a market economy has matched the popularity of the Washington Consensus of democratic governance and liberal market economics. The themes of the Beijing Consensus include bleeding-edge innovations that create solutions faster than problems arise, shifting development focus to individuals, sustaining quality of life by prioritizing equality, and self-determination as a source of security, asymmetry, and leverage. The first theme focuses on problem solving. The second theme emphasizes people's quality of life as opposed to the gross domestic product, and the third highlights China's self-determination in the context of global politics that helps avoid manipulation by other powers. The Chinese model after the 2008 financial crisis gained wider currency by including economic freedom without political freedom, a phenomenon that was largely thought to be unthinkable. In fact, the democracy and market fundamentalism of the Washington Consensus is largely associated with the 2008 financial crisis. China has managed to blend an authoritarian political system with economic liberalism, and they've managed to successfully go together. China's soft power is largely based on its recent economic success, and how Beijing turned this into influences is especially of special interest with the choice of aid, trade, and investment, particularly in Africa. China's economy as a source of soft power has also appealed to great players in international politics, such as Russia, who have turned their focus towards economic growth as opposed to democracy. Manmohan Singh, former Indian Prime Minister, urged the emulation of the Chinese economic model and approach towards global trade. Former Brazilian President, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, sent a team to benchmark China's economic success. Middle Eastern conservative leaders have also emulated China's economic model. This Chinese model is perceived as a viable alternative to American and Western models that have over the recent past been perceived as failures and their values being presented as too liberal. The Beijing Consensus assumes a more practical compared to a moral approach. China's foreign policies are driven by peaceful coexistence, safety and prosperity, and harmony through Confucian values. China's policies or terms of engagement are based on economic and strategic interests as opposed to America's demands such as respect for human rights, the rule of law, good governance, transparency, and democracy. Countries that have historically been sanctioned by the West enjoy cordial relationships with China that seek to redefine the world order on its own terms. In the post-Mao era, China's approach to global affairs became less confrontational and more constructive, confident, and sophisticated. This approach has been geared towards maintaining global stability that enables China to focus on domestic issues, especially its economy. Beijing advocates for the peaceful resolution of conflicts, combating global threats such as terrorism and climate change, and disarmament or arms control. China has focused on the peaceful global rise to counter any possible negative attitudes surrounding its strategic placement in international politics. The peaceful rise of China into a global superpower has ascertained that its neighbors are its cornerstone. China's foreign policy has shifted from striving for acceptance in the international community to becoming a global player whom others strive for acceptance. The foreign policy targets economic development as a source of gaining and sustaining global power. Chinese participation in multilateral organizations has facilitated the creation of closer ties with its neighbors and other global players. The China Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, free trade area has created closer ties in East Asia. In 2003, China became a member of the Southeast Asia Treaty of Amity and Cooperation and has also been actively involved in regional security talks like the ASEAN Regional Forum, ARF. China is the largest contributor of peacekeepers of all the permanent members of the United Nations, having deployed over 40,000 soldiers to over 30 United Nations missions. Beijing contributes 15% of the United Nations budget, which is second to America's at 28%. Some reports suggest that China's payments are more timely and in full, compared to America's. China was central to the formation of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO, that promotes social, political, and economic collaboration across itself, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. On the negative side, the Chinese model is associated with massive pollution due to high investments in industrialization, income inequality, and corruption. In relation to America, China's military and economic power has not yet matched America's, but the progress is not far off. Corruption is still a serious problem in China, with those who are favored by the Chinese Communist Party often being overlooked in investigations, with the opposite being true for those who are not favored by the ruling party. China's cultural and art industry does not match America's Hollywood. Chinese institutions of higher learning are gaining ground on America's, but they're not yet there. The growth of Chinese education has been evidenced by the exponential rise of foreign student enrollment over the recent past. The authoritarian nature of the Chinese government implies that the concentration of power translates to a shortage of non-governmental organization to promote Beijing's soft power. China's soft power is further diminished in the West, with lacking the rule of law, human rights, democracy, and equality. Despite all this, a recent BBC poll revealed that twice as many nations view China more favorably compared to the US. Similarly, America's soft power is on the decline in around 15 countries, according to a poll by Pew Charitable Trust.